Kelly Dean Yagelniski. Embrace the potential within to live a life of significance and impact. As you activate your life, work, and soul force, encourage growth not only within yourself, but also within those around you. Be the catalyst for positive transformation, inspiring others to embark on their own journeys of discovery and fulfillment. Kelly Dean Yagelniski.
Hey everybody, this is Darren and Jessica Salquist with Next Level.
Good vibes only.
Yeah.
And today, man, we got a real treat here. We got a friend of ours that's in the heroic community, and he just wrote this new amazing book, Mastering Life's Project. So we're going to be talking about this book, and we're going to be talking with Kelly, who's here on the podcast with us today, and he's going to share some of his ideas and the thoughts. And we're going to go over a few of the chapters that he has written in this great book. And then we'll go from there. How you doing, Kelly?
Great, doing really well. Thanks so much to have me on here today, Jessica and Darren. I appreciate the opportunity, and great seeing you again.
Yeah, awesome. I'm just going to read a little bit here, a little bit of a background where Kelly Dean Yagelniski is a seasoned consultant, coach, author, and speaker with over 30 years of experience in leadership, project management, and transformational change. And Kelly is the author of the new book, Mastering Life's Projects, Unleash Your Energy and Transform Your Life. Kelly, what was a big inspiration for you taking on a book and writing, all the process, like, I have this idea, I want to write a book. And then you put it through and you did it. So what was that like for you?
I think several years ago, I kind of came to the realization that I wanted to create kind of a playbook for myself. I was into consulting and wanting to get into coaching, and that's kind of how it all started. And then, it started out being kind of a project management business type of book. And then there was a spark that came from a very personal realization that many of us manage our work really well. And being in project management, I had been on many very successful project teams, but we don't seem to manage our personal lives that same way. So, in work, we hit projects, or we lead projects, we hit deadlines, we solve problems, we deliver results. But yet in our personal lives, we seem to be scattered, tired, and misaligned. So for me, that really came through kind of post-COVID. I was dealing with some health struggles, some chronic back pain, stress, some anxiety. And, I recall a point in time, I think it was March 2021, where I had such intense back pain that I said, enough is enough. I need to figure this out. I need to do something once and for all. And that was kind of the start of it. And that became the book kind of grew out of that experience. And, when I say life is your greatest project, I mean, it deserves the same care, structure, and intention as anything else that matters in our lives. So, yeah,
100%. Right. I mean, geez, our life is the only one we get. So it's definitely a project to be worked on. And I agree with what you're saying. I love that you brought your experience and work into this, because when I work with individuals, sometimes in coaching clients, I sometimes ask, what do they do for work, and how do they do, and what tools do they use that they're good at work? And then how can we use some of those tools in their personal life, right? They get all this practice that they don't even recognize, and then not using it in their personal life. Jess, do you see some of that within what you do?
Yeah, I when you said that we focus on our work projects or project management, and we're really good at that. Definitely that's something I do in my day job that I do really well. I'm organized. I've got, protocols, and I'm AM, PM, everything I'm doing is creating progress and action. And then when I'm done with that, I go into my personal life, and it is a little more challenging. But you talk a lot about the life project. And what does that really actually look like? Is that a season, a chapter, a goal? How do you use project in a framework for life specifically? And how do you kind of look at that in more detail?
Yeah, no, great. Great question. I can try and define a little bit. Very simply, a life project is a meaningful, temporary effort designed to create real improvement in one area of your life. I find it's more concrete than a dream and more actionable than a vague goal. So a dream, we might say, I want a better life. I want to create wealth to support my family. I want to get that promotion, attain that degree. a goal might say, I want to lose 20 pounds. I want to make X number of dollars by the end of the year. I want to get married. I want to start a new business. But a life project really says, over the next 30, 60, 90 days, I'm going to get this thing done and completed. And this is how I'm going to do it. So it's really kind of rolling up our sleeves and really getting after it, really manifesting that goal. So it really needs to have a clear vision, a purpose, an objective. It needs to have a desired outcome and scope, what's in scope, what's out of scope.
All right, Kelly, you were talking about kind of bite size, that 30, 60, 90 days to create that action for your life project. And I think those are more sustainable kind of ways to like create your action, what you're going to do, and be able to check in that 30, 60, 90 days. So you want to expand on kind of what you were saying there in regards to maybe some examples of what works in that kind of framework?
Well, right. I think it's, you're right. You want to chunk it off and have a bite-sized project that could be attainable in a relatively short period of time. So again, we want to have a clear vision, a purpose, and objectives. We want to have desired outcome and scope, what's in, what's out, and a time horizon for completion, description of the work, activities, resources, and so forth of what needs to be done. So, an example, like even when I was creating the book itself, was, the overall project was to get the book published, but I had to break that down. My first kind of mini project was I went through a mind mapping exercise to mind map, what does the content look like? From the mind map, I had a kind of another mini project, which was the outline for the project. And then I started drafting it, and then getting to the final draft and editing it and getting it ready for publication and so forth. So I bit that down into kind of mini projects throughout the year in terms of that. So sometimes we get overwhelmed where we have such a, publishing the book is a overwhelming objective, and I was overwhelmed for sure a lot of times. But I kind of broke it down and said, okay, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do this. So that's kind of what we need to think about when we're approaching a life project. When we say life project, it is, it could be a lifelong goal, it could be a dream that extends for a longer period of time. But we want to kind of really dial in and get to a shorter term objective.
Yeah, awesome. What was it like too? Did you ever adjust your timelines on some things, like that you had a goal, like I want to get done this fast, like, and maybe, whether life happens or something else? How was that with having the flexibility in there as well?
Well, the funny thing is, I spent a good chunk of 24 kind of writing the draft. And then at the end of the year, I kind of, I said to myself, I don't really like the draft that I have, and I either need to start over or I need to kind of forget the project and forget about this idea. So I chose the former, in which in the end of 24, 25, I started over and I set really kind of realistic timeframes and sprints. And I made a conscious effort to do a little bit every day, a little bit every day, a little bit every day. And then, to be honest, I had no intention of actually publishing in 25. But by the time I started getting into that motion and doing a little bit every day, I got to the end of October, and the team that I was working with that was helping me do this said, you know what, I think we're pretty ready to go. If you want to publish this before Christmas, we're ready to go. So I actually ended up publishing in November 20th. Far exceeding my goal of probably March or June of 26. So kind of on both sides of it was, on one hand, I had to kind of reset my expectations, refocus. And then as it turned out, I was able to achieve the goal much sooner than I originally thought. So
yeah, that's pretty awesome, especially almost like revamping it and then getting things done ahead of schedule. That's super awesome. So kind of leading into that is that the power of intentionality. And one of the big themes in your book is intentionality, not living on autopilot or being constant reaction mode, but actually designing your own day. So how do you define intentional living in the context of mastering life's projects?
Well, for me, intentional living means choosing how you want to live instead of drifting through your days by default. So for me, it's in alignment with the eightfold path, kind of right understanding, right intent, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, right concentration. And I created a ninth one, kind of right projects, in terms of having that intentionality, that kind of all lines. So it means being clear about what matters most, making decisions that align with my values and my personal and professional goals, taking consistent action in the areas of energy, work, and love. So it's a difference between reacting to life and designing it. So mastering life projects has a lot to say about life design. In my consulting work, I'm often involved in engineering, design, architecture. So it is no surprise that I approach my energy and love projects in a very similar way. Of kind of, with that motto, you need to design your life, not just plan it. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's what I loved about your book, us being on the same kind of playing field with heroic and going through all those different ideas and thought processes and then going through energy, work, and love. I mean, there's so many things in this book as I was reading. It's like, oh man, this just resonates so much. And I just dig it. And I can see myself already having one or two clients is like, oh, this would be a good book for this client to kind of sit down with. And then I can sit down, share those tools, and then we can kind of go back and forth through that. And then I always love giving my clients something that they can refer to later, that, not just talking about it. And so that way, if they miss the idea, hey, go to this page or go to that page and check this out. Right. And then have them read the book and highlight what stood out to them, which this kind of just allows things to get a little bit more grounded for them. And then they get to use those tools a little bit more. But yeah.
And
Awesome.
as a coach and a leader, words and speaking to your staff or your peers or someone you're coaching in the language that they're going to understand. And I love, as we read other books and things, it gives us other language and terminology to use that can relate to the person, the audience that you're speaking to. What stood out for me that you guys just talked about designing and like this architecture of your life, and that's something that I can relate to as this creativeness, right? We're creators, and that we're designing our life. And what does that look like? And if somebody, has an artistic flow or they resonate with that type of language, I can see that being very helpful and beneficial for them to visually imagine. I'm a visual person. I like to visualize kind of what I'm thinking of, what my intentionality is. And so I think a lot of people, like you said, get really overwhelmed of life as a whole and being able to notch it down into bite-sized things. But we've got people that are super busy, have lots of deadlines, are looking at their emails all the time. They're very stimulated and manic with energy quite a bit throughout the day, feeling like they need to be productive. And so, do you have a couple ways that to help cultivate a more intentional mindset for people to develop in their daily routines or protocols?
Yeah, absolutely. First, I'll just comment on the design. So, if we were to build a house or we were to renovate our basement, uh, we would go through a design phase first, would we not? Right? We wouldn't just
Mhm.
go to the lumber yard and pick up lumber and materials and start building. We would want to have some type of a plan, some type of design, maybe get an architect involved. So why would we not want to do that in our lives, right? The same kind of rigor in terms of the design. So that's kind of a thought I'll leave you with. But
Mhm.
for sure, in terms of somebody feeling a bit overwhelmed, so a number of steps. I think, first, pause and ask what's most important right now, what matters most right now, and once you have answered that question, if you have some ideas, choose one life goal, one project, instead of trying to manage multiple goals and projects, and commit to getting that one thing done. So wildly important goals, you probably heard of that. I also call it wildly important projects, right? In terms of aligning those. So those are kind of two things. We want to be focused. Third, we want to, before we begin our project or achieving our goal, we want to ask ourselves, is this aligned with my purpose, my vision, and my personal and professional commitments, right? And there's kind of a decision matrix there. If yes, proceed and complete the project, that kind of thing. If no, maybe we need to park that and consider it at another time, right? So that's kind of a bit of an algorithm there in terms of getting there. And lastly, it's really create one small daily action that keeps you connected to that goal and that project. Small actions create that clarity and momentum, right? I find that people aren't stuck because they don't lack ambition, dreams, or goals. They're stuck because they're overscoped. They start too many projects. They work on many goals and finish none of them. It's like, I was explaining this to a client saying, it's like, sometimes you have your laptop open and you got so many tabs open that you can't actually see what it reads. And then so sometimes you just reboot your computer just to start over because you've got so many things going on. You've got so many books that you haven't read. You have all these courses you haven't finished. So sometimes you got to step back, pause, and really focus on what's important right now, and let's get after it, right? In terms of setting up some goals and projects, right? And then taking those micro moments or those micro actions every day to get it. Even when I was writing the book, there were periods of time that I spent hours or days kind of focusing on it, but most of it was just writing a couple sentences, a couple of paragraphs every day, and just saying I'm going to do something every day, and that's kind of how things got done, right? So
yeah, that's showing up that consistency. I love it. One of the things I really enjoyed in the book is in each chapter you use one that the pyramid, in that pyramid broken up into that triad, and so having those in each chapter, how you anchored it down, and that simple structure to align your energy with what matters most. Can you explain what the triad is and why you chose that structure?
I think you've often heard of this before. Other luminaries certainly have said the same things. Kind of keep it simple. It's really a triad is a simple group of 3 key ideas that help people understand and apply a concept in a practical way. Kind of a simplified structure that helps the reader remember the teaching points and actually practice them. A lot of what I do is really going from knowledge to practice to mastery, but from a project management perspective, it's all about kind of execution. So it's really, I chose the triad or the 3 structure, that it's memorable, it's practical, it's kind of 1, 2, 3, go, and it's designed to be easy to practice and master. So anything we do, we can use this approach, right? So
yeah, super awesome.
Yeah. Do you have anything else on the triad?
I
see an image here that you drew.
Yeah, that's some of the stuff that I wrote down. One of the chapters that really stood out to me is that I think it was chapter 6, Be Valuable. And in that chapter, I think that you kind of talked around the concept of embracing the roles of being the creator, being a builder, and being a problem solver. And then one of the big key words that stood out there as well was being a beacon of contribution. And that I was like, it's being a beacon of contribution. That is just something that I strive for, that I would love to be and be seen in that way, of just moving in that direction and knowing that I'm able to help individuals in that way. And I got to reflect on some of the things in my life as I was reading that part of the book, and some of the things that I've experienced in the past, where my past profession, I worked at St. Luke's Rehab. In my journey through the whole facility, just going from security all the way into management, and just the process, and thinking about, I was the creator going through all those things. And then as I was doing it, I was building this new identity and who I was, and then going through that and being a problem solver, and it just, I don't know, it just, that whole thing just allowed me to really kind of take a step back and go into that. But that's where I'd come into that. And then that triad concept again of the creator, the builder, and the problem solver just really resonated with me on that.
Yeah.
Yeah. One of the things I tried to do with the triad, that there was a little bit of, method to each of it, so that each kind of built on each other. So if you look at that example that you use, being a creator, so we have to create first. We have an idea, we manifest that idea, but it doesn't really become reality until we build it. And as you know, as you start building something, we tend to run into problems and challenges and issues. So it kind of, there's a bit of flow meant to be in terms of these, in terms of, even my chapter 1 talks about right projects. It's really about, what's the problem we common humanity that we face as humans. What's that problem we're faced right now? Maybe too many projects, not the right project. That's kind of the problem. What's the solution is kind of the next step, is, okay, how do we overcome the problem? And then the third part of that is, okay, what are the benefits if you select the right project? So it's kind of, I do try and follow a kind of 1, 2, 3 logical sequencing step through the triads. But I'm glad you appreciate it and found it useful. So
yeah, most definitely.
One of the things you talk about is overcoming the obstacles and self-doubt, and one of my favorite quotes is Ohm's "Obstacles make me stronger." That's something that I think we learn to use an obstacle as fuel. You talked a little bit about the fact that it's not an issue that people have ideas, because I could any second somebody's like, "Do you got an idea?" And I'd be like, "Yeah, I got an idea." Like easy to have ideas, right? But it's the staying in the action and actually creating that momentum, like you said, and being able to align with your purpose, your values, the things that are important to you. So when you're coaching or consulting, those kind of things, what are the most common obstacles? Maybe it's fear, doubt, those kind of things. But what are the most common obstacles you see when people are really trying to create and step into that meaningful life project? Because I think that's really important, is like what's important to you and what's meaningful and how does it align? But what are some of those common challenges that maybe we can all relate to?
I think three things. I think one of them, and I think it's a common thing in this day and age, given the number of distractions that we face. So it's kind of that low energy. You know, uh, it's especially when people don't have protocols in place to improve their sleep, exercise, nutrition, breathing, and focus. So there's that kind of low level of energy just because they haven't spent some time maybe formalizing or thinking about their habits and protocols. So it's those habits that steal energy, time, and attention rather than the habits that increase energy. I was having a conversation with someone yesterday, and it was like, okay, what gives you energy, and what takes away your energy, and focus on those things. Start doing the things that give you energy, and stop doing those things that take away from your energy. Usually, when I work with a client, that's the first place we start, is kind of, how are you feeling? How are you dialed in? Where is your energy? So that's kind of number one. Number two is, I find that people might have the energy. They're go, go, go. They're an entrepreneur. They're really ready to go, but they got too many competing priorities, and they're chasing too many things at once. At times I feel the same way, and you kind of got to dial that back. And again, what's important now? What's my wildly important goal? What's that project I need to do? And then there's others that are unclear about their goals, and they don't have a clear strategy. And they have these ideas and goals and dreams, but they don't really have a good concrete way to manifest it. And lastly, I'll say, and this is kind of a recent development that I found in some of my observations. It's just a general lack of confidence, kind of self doubt, which often turns into procrastination, complacency, fear, and excuses. So those are some of the things that I find that people are doing. So they're not failing necessarily because of they're lazy or unmotivated, but they're caring too much. They're not focused on what's important, and they're trying to do many things at once, and that's really affects their confidence. They have doubts about how they should proceed. Right. So
Yeah, I completely agree with those three. I see that in leadership a lot. And, annually we do a performance evaluation, and I'll ask sometimes, what are your goals for this next year in your position or with staff? And that's sometimes very hard to articulate for people that are working in a very high stimulating environment that's very sometimes can be very reactive and distracting. And so I absolutely agree with those, and I can also relate to those. So, yeah. Yeah.
And I love that if you could share one of the main tools that you like to use in that book, and maybe it's a script or it's a question that you might ask, maybe a micro habit that you set up for individuals, that helps people shift from that I'll get to it someday to I'm doing something about it today.
yeah, given that the book is called Mastering Life Projects, and I've spent probably over 30 years in terms of the project management space. A tool that I've created is called Minimum Viable Project. You've often heard of minimum viable product, which is kind of creating a product which has minimum functionality that you can take to market. And I kind of worked off of that idea and said, what could a minimum viable project look like? So if I was speaking with someone about their energy, about a work project, or about a love project, or a personal project, it would be, what's that smallest meaningful version of this project that I can actually execute in a short period of time, whether that's a week or 30 days or 60 days. What would that minimum scope be that I can get done to achieve my objectives? What are the key or critical resources that I would have to get this project done? What's the earliest time frame that I can actually achieve this project and contribute to my goals? So these are some of the questions that people can start asking themselves, and really it stops that procrastinating, and it starts giving people a tool to kind of roll up their sleeves and make projects. So I could meet with someone for coffee or have a conversation for an hour, and we can kind of crank out what I call a minimum viable project to help them create some momentum, create a small project, which will lead to a bigger project, and maybe leading to achievement of their wildly important goal.
Yeah, one of the things that I loved about your book is at the end of each section, the series of questions that you have people, see, you've written out, okay, ask yourself these questions and then fill out these answers to give you that guide. And it's nice because I think that's where sometimes people just don't know. I don't know what questions to ask myself, or I don't even know, like journaling. I don't know what to write down in my journal, but that's one thing that I found I loved about the book of, after, like I said, each section, just that the questions, the series of questions, because I found myself going through those as well and being able to, like, questions I might not have thought of. So I really love that part of the book.
Well, thank you.
Jess, where do you want to go next here?
Well, it made me think about, of course, I'm relating it to the work that I do, but
Yeah.
I noticed that staff are given tasks, right? They're like, okay, this needs to get done. And I absolutely know that, we work on standard operating procedures, instructions, and guidance. And the worst thing, we could do sometimes is just say, oh, I need you to do this. And, even if you give them a deadline, but they have no criteria, so some of those questions that you have and being able to look that minimum viable project itself to then have some clear guidelines. Even if someone said to me, I need to have this reviewed and returned to me by this date, then maybe if I don't get that guidance from that person, then I need to create my own action plan of being able to look at it, maybe section by section. I have this time. What do I need to do to provide a response for this person? And then ask questions too. Like sometimes we just need to be curious and ask those questions and specifics of what they actually need. But I do notice that some of those questions I can utilize when I'm working with staff too, because it's easy just to say, hey, I need this. Can you get it done? And to give them some guidance and some general standards, some fundamentals or foundation of it, they're going to be more successful and they're going to be more confident if you can just give them a little more than just say, figure it out yourself. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, no, I think you hit on a couple of words, foundational, fundamentals, just getting the ball rolling. And sometimes, as you know, with projects, sometimes the hardest part is just getting started and just getting going. So if we can just say, hey, here's an MVP, here's a minimum viable project. What's the scope? What are some of alternatives we have to consider? How do we get this thing going? How do we get it off the ground? And boom, you've got the team going off and achieving the objectives or the goals. So.
Yeah. And that kind of leads into getting 1% better daily.
Yeah. And what I was going to say about the book, where I think it's great because for what I do now as a mental performance coach and personal trainer, that I can see the benefits of this book and how I can utilize with my clients. And then Jessica, you being in more the professional world and working with administration and going with executives, how this can also be very utilized within what you're doing with your team in that structure, right?
Having intentionality.
Yeah,
when
most
you're
definitely.
Working, doing these things. Yeah.
But one of the things you talked about, Kelly, in the book is that 1% better. I love that concept. And that's what I really work with my clients with, is getting 1% better every day, not shooting for, this large number, but God, just can we make that percentage 1% better, and that compound effect that we have, that how it shows up daily. So how do you invite the readers in your book of Mastering Life's Projects? How do you invite them to think about 1% better inside Mastering Life's Projects?
Well, there's a quote by Aristotle that resonates with me. We are what we repeatedly do. Excellence then is not an act, but a habit. And, I invite people to think about 1% better as the discipline of small, meaningful projects repeated successfully, right? And again, you don't need to overhaul your life in a weekend. You do need to make the next good decision and then repeat that process over and over. This is how confidence, capacity, and results compound. I do want to say one thing is that one must learn to master the 1%, because improvement does not happen when you keep churning on your protocols without real progress. So we often think of compounding effect when we talk about money and interest, right? So the compounding effect in wealth creation is that we're getting interest on the interest on the interest on the interest, right? That's the compounding effect. So same thing with habits. If we're not mastering those habits, we're not really getting the benefits of that habit if we're constantly churning. So we're starting, stopping in terms of some of these habits. So I think it's important that 1% better is a cumulative. So we become 1% better today. We need to carry that forward in the next day and the next day and compound on those kinds of things. So yeah, I'll stop there and see if that resonates with you.
Yeah, I think the biggest part too is that reminder of to my clients and that I work with is the little thing that you did today. That's 1% better. That's what it is, right? And then practice it again tomorrow. And sometimes they don't see those small wins as moving forward, right? And so that's where I love the focus. That's that 1% better. So I love that you included that concept into the book.
Yeah.
And what are a few practical examples of that 1% actions that someone could take in a life project around health, career, or a relationship?
I think in health, it could be, going to bed 30 minutes earlier, maybe doing an extra set or rep or adding weights to your training program, kind of increasing that resistance, maybe meditating for an extra minute or two, taking a daily walk and going an extra, couple 100 meters, drinking an extra glass of water. Some things you can work with there. In work, it could be maybe spending 20 focused minutes on your most important task before opening your email, maybe reaching out to one key person daily that you need to advance your project. Or maybe it's just finishing a part of your project that you've been avoiding and kind of getting it done. So those could be some things there. In relationships, it might be putting your phone away during dinner, sending a thoughtful message to a family member or friend, or having an honest conversation that maybe you've been putting off or postponing. So it's, again, these small actions often look simple, but they can change the direction of one's life if we start to accumulate these on a regular basis, right? And again, all those things that I said, you want to master those and accumulate them. So putting your phone away during dinner becomes like brushing your teeth. Like everyone just comes to the dinner table, they know that we're not supposed to be on our phones at the dinner table, and you kind of that becomes kind of standard operating protocol, right? So that's the key message, I think, is that we have to make sure we're mastering these things and moving on to the next thing we want to optimize, right?
Yeah, super awesome.
Yeah, and what I like about the concept of 1% better is it doesn't have to be overwhelming, and it can be something very simple. You talked about simplicity. One of the ones that I like to focus on is love, and I bring love to work so I can celebrate people and be grateful for people, but also outside of work too. So my 1% through my love is reaching out to somebody and sharing gratitude, or just a celebration of them. And I find like at work, that's one of my favorite parts of my day. It's like, oh, it's time to celebrate or be grateful for someone, whether that's a Teams message or sending out an email celebrating somebody. But super simple, right? It just takes you to pause and then make some time for it, carve it out, do it, and then you've created your 1% better in love. So I really like that concept because it's not overwhelming.
Yeah, and the other thing I'll comment on, sometimes 1% better is just stopping to doing something, right? And it's kind of crazy, but it should be easy to stop doing something, right? If you think about it, but it could be addiction, a bad habit, or whatever the case may be. So those could lead to, I always say +1 -1 doesn't equal 0, it equals +2, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I like the stop. I think that's sometimes our life, actually, we'd benefit from stopping something more than we would from starting something.
Yeah, and it leaves room for that thing you want to do, right? So sometimes it's we empty the beanbag and then we fill it up one by one, kind of thing, right?
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, as we're getting close here to wrapping these things up, I'd really like for you, if you can, is there one key takeaway that you'd like to distill in Mastering Life projects that you'd want all our listeners to remember after this conversation, especially ones that maybe feel busy. They're successful on paper, but maybe a bit misaligned inside.
Yeah, well, I think I want people to remember that you do not need to fix your whole life all at once. And I think that's what we all attempt to do, right? We want these quick fixes. It's again my analogy of we've got 100 tabs opened on our laptop, right? Let's just start with one, do what we need to do, and move on to the next thing. So, and I think it's important that we need to choose a wildly important goal, right? What's that one thing that I can do over the next 60, 90, 180 days that's I say wildly because it means if I did that thing, it's going to really have a positive impact in my life or those around me. And then related to that is choosing a wildly important project that will help me advance or move towards that goal, making it clear, planning it, executing it, and taking consistent action to get it done. So again, we don't want to have open-ended projects. We want to start something. It's a temporary endeavor. We want to start it. We want to finish it so that we can move on to the next thing. That was one of the challenges I had with the book in terms of that final draft. I just kind of wanted to keep wordsmithing it. And then I had a coach I was working with that said, let's just move to the editing stage. Let's get to that phase of it. Right. So, and then we can kind of move on. So that's the same thing here. We want to start something, we want to finish it, we want to move on to the next project, right?
Yeah.
When you do that with intention, especially in your energy, work, and love, and you keep balance between those three, life starts to feel more aligned, more meaningful, and more alive.
Yeah.
It's something I need work on. I have a lot of open projects.
Yeah. Well, it's like we said, it's the ideas. Those are things that flow in, right? It's starting, like you said, and it's finishing it. And I believe when you start something and you actually finish it, that's where your confidence comes from. So I imagine when you got done with the book and you were going to publishing, like you had maybe a sense of like confidence. How did that change for you that you knew you started something and you finished it?
Well, I think it was, if I talk about the book, I can point to that and say that, the book is an example of me following what I wrote about in the book. It's kind of use my content of the book to actually manifest and create the book. So yeah, I think it's, but it's a project, right? So, the funny thing is writing the book seemed to be the easy part. Selling and marketing it now is another project, and I'm finding it much more harder than actually writing the book, right? So it's everything is relative, and it's now it's the next phase. It's evergreening it and trying to get the message out and actually sell the book, right? So
Yeah. No, absolutely. And that, which brings us to, we'd love to be able to help you do that. You being on our podcast, we're hoping to get some word out. Also, where can we find your book? And then how can the audience and those listening support you or attend a workshop or something that you have to share with everyone?
Yeah, well, first of all, the book is available on Amazon.com or .ca or whichever country you have access to. So it's available on Amazon. And again, if someone sent me a direct email and they would like to bulk purchase, I can get some discounts on bulk buys if anyone's interested in some of the books for a workshop or for a class or something like that. So again, my email is kelly.dean@kdsi.ca. I'm available on LinkedIn as well. Kelly Yagelniski. There's not too many Kelly Yagelniskis on LinkedIn. You should be able to find me. And I am involved in around Facebook and Instagram as well. But
Okay.
We'll make sure we set some of those links up off of this podcast that we do here today when we release this.
In our notes, yeah.
Yeah. Anything else on there, Jess?
Yeah, no, I could go on, but I think, I'm good with a lot of those concepts. I learned a lot. They're really great reminders also. I think having a guidebook, like you said, you created this playbook for yourself, which I think is actually an amazing idea. Like even if, I didn't have intention to publish something, creating that guidebook for yourself is pretty extraordinary to have something like this, 514 pages that I did look and see a lot of wisdom and a lot of great material. And I think anybody picking up your book will grab a nugget out of there that they can apply to their life to create a more joyous, pleasant life, that they can reach their goals, the things that are wildly important to them, that are wild, the projects and the goals and everything like that. So I appreciate the time being with us today.
Yeah, well, thanks so much for having me, and it's been an honor to be on your program, and also great to connect with both of you as well. So appreciate it.
Yeah, awesome, Kelly. Thank you. So we just want to say thank you for sharing your wisdom, the frameworks, your heart with us today, especially the gift of time. That's the one thing that I really appreciate. Time is that one thing that we can never get back. So you being here with us today is a gift. And again, I just want all those listeners to remember that your life is your greatest project. So choose one meaningful project today, commit to that being that 1% better, and keep taking those steps to get to that next level and live your life with good vibes only.
That's right. Thank you.
All right, you guys. Thanks. Peace.